So guys, now we'll learn about the types of tides. So basically, you can classify the tides based on the frequency into three types. They are semi-diurnal tide, diurnal tide, and mixed tide. So what is semi-diurnal tide? So there are four times this tide occurs, which is two high tides and two low tides in a day. So the successive high tides or the successive low tides, they are approximately of the same height. Now, what are diurnal tides? Tides occur only two times, which is one high tide, one low tide. And the successive high and low tides, they are approximately of the same height. And mixed tide. Now, what is mixed tide? These have variations in height. They generally occur along the west coast of North America. Now, the tides are also based on the sun, moon, and the earth positions. So, the height to which the high tide will rise, it depends on the position of the sun and the moon with respect to the earth. So basically the height to which the rising water, which is nothing but the high tide, the height to which it rises, it depends on the position of the sun and the moon. So we can classify them into two types, which is the spring tide and the neap tide. So when the sun, moon and the earth are in a straight line, then the height of the tide, it will be higher, which is called spring tide. And this spring tide, it occurs twice a month. One time on full moon day and the other time on new moon day. Now what is neap tide? Also remember, there is a 7-day interval between the spring tides and the neap tides. So during a neap tide, the sun, moon are at right angles to each other. And so these forces of the sun and moon, they tend to counteract one another. Obviously, the moon's attraction is more than twice as strong as the sun's, but it is diminished by the counteracting force of the sun's gravitational pull. But once in a month, when moon's orbit is closest to the earth, which is the perigee, unusually high and low tides occurs. So during this time, the tide range is normally greater than normal. 2 weeks later, what happens? The moon is farthest from the earth, apogee. So now the moon's gravitational force is limited. So the tidal ranges are less than the average heights. Now, when the earth is closest to the sun, the tidal ranges are much greater with unusually high and unusually low tides. And when the earth is the farthest, which is aphelion, the tide ranges are much less than average. Now, the time between this high tide and the low tide, that is between the rising tide and the falling tide, is called the ebb. The time between the low tide and the high tide is called the flow or flood. That's it about the tides.